The chromatic drought. Detective Marcus Sine squinted at the fading landscape through his office window. Another day, another shade of gray, lost to whatever this phenomenon was. The sky no longer held its azure expanse, just a flat, pale ceiling hanging lifelessly above a world growing increasingly two-dimensional. 3 more reports of rivers running dry in the Eastern District, Officer Palmer said, dropping a thin file onto Sane's desk. And the hospitals reporting 17 new cases of what they're calling chromatic dehydration. Sine nodded grimly. The medical examiner had shown him the bodies last week. Skin paper-thin, organs collapsed inward, as if someone had extracted not just the water, but the very substance from them. Their eyes, once spherical, had flattened to perfect circles, staring out from faces that resembled pencil sketches more than human remains. Any pattern to where it's spreading? Sine asked, though he already knew the answer. None that makes sense, Palmer replied. It's jumping between neighborhoods, between people who've never met. The only consistent thing is that once it starts in an area, everything there loses dimension within 72 hours. Sine turned away from the window. His own hands seemed less substantial today, the knuckles less pronounced, the veins no longer raised beneath his skin. He'd taken to pressing his palms against solid objects throughout the day, reassuring himself that he could still feel texture, still interact with a 3-dimensional world. What about the library research? He asked. Palmer's expression darkened. Archives are becoming affected. Books are losing their ink, words disappearing from pages even as people try to read them. This was worse than Sane had feared. Knowledge itself was being drained from the world. The river had been the first to go in Westbrook. Once a vibrant blue-green artery cutting through the heart of the city, it had faded to a pale, silvery streak before disappearing entirely, leaving only a shallow depression in the ground where water had flowed for centuries. Sine stood in the dry riverbed, feeling the cracked earth beneath his shoes. It didn't feel like drought. There was no sense of moisture having evaporated. Rather, it was as if the concept of river had been partially erased from reality, leaving behind this ghostly impression. Detective Sine, a woman approached him, her white lab coat nearly indistinguishable from the colorless landscape. Dr. Eliza Tanner, the city's leading physicist, had been studying the phenomenon since its first appearance 3 months ago. The process is accelerating, she said without preamble. We've been measuring the dimensional collapse, and what took weeks in the beginning is now happening in days. How long? Sine asked. Until complete two-dimensionality? For the entire planet? She shrugged, the gesture oddly truncated, as if her shoulders couldn't quite complete their full range of motion. At the current rate, 2 weeks, maybe less. Sine swallowed. And then what? I don't know. Dr. Tanner admitted. But I found something you should see. The university's rare book collection had been moved to a secure facility once the libraries began to empty. Dr. Tanner led Sign through rows of glass cases containing ancient texts, their pages increasingly blank as the phenomenon progressed. Most of our oldest manuscripts are already gone, she explained. But this one is different. She stopped before a small display containing what appeared to be a journal bound in matte black leather. Unlike the other books, whose pages had turned a uniform white, this one's text remained stubbornly visible, though the letters seemed to shift and rearrange themselves whenever Sane tried to focus on them. It's resisting the effect, Dr. Tanner said. And more importantly, it appeared in our collection the day the river began to fade. No record of acquisition, no catalog entry. It was simply there. Sign leaned closer. Can you translate it? Portions. It appears to be a record kept by something called the Society of Final Memory. From what I can decipher, they were an ancient order dedicated to preserving knowledge through catastrophic events. Preserving knowledge? But everything's being erased. Dr. Tanner's fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted her glasses. A gesture Sign noticed seemed less three-dimensional than it should have been. I think they made a mistake, she whispered. A terrible one. The journal led them to the underground chambers beneath the old cathedral. Sign had never known these catacombs existed, though they appeared to have been built centuries before the church itself. The society maintained outposts throughout the world, Dr. Tanner explained, as they descended the narrow stairs, flashlight beams cutting through dust that hung motionless in the air. According to the journal, they believed humanity was cyclical, civilizations rising and falling in patterns, with crucial knowledge lost in each collapse. So they preserved information across these cycles? Sign asked, ducking beneath a low archway. The stone felt wrong beneath his fingers, too smooth, as if the grain and texture were being slowly erased. Yes, but more than that, they developed a method to intentionally reset civilization if they deemed it necessary, a way to erase dangerous knowledge while preserving what they considered essential wisdom. The stairway opened into a vast circular chamber. At its center stood a pedestal holding what appeared to be an obsidian sphere, the only object Soin had seen in weeks that still possessed a sense of depth and dimension. Surrounding it, slumped against the walls and floor, were desiccated bodies, or rather, what remained of them. They resembled paper cutouts more than corpses, flattened and colorless. The last active members of the society, Dr. Tanner murmured. They activated the device, the mnemonic purge, they called it. But something went wrong. Sign approached the sphere cautiously. Unlike everything else in this fading world, it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. A perfect three-dimensional void amid the increasingly two-dimensional reality. The journal says the purge was meant to be selective, Dr. Tanner continued, her voice growing thinner, less substantial. To remove specific knowledge while leaving the fundamental structure of reality intact. But they miscalculated. Instead of erasing dangerous information, they started erasing the fundamental properties of existence: dimension, color, substance. And now it's spreading like a contagion throughout reality. Sign reached toward the sphere, feeling a strange pull. Can it be reversed? The journal wasn't clear, but Dr. Tanner's words cut off abruptly. Sign turned to find her frozen in place, her form suddenly flat against the wall, like a photograph. Her mouth was open in mid-sentence, but no sound emerged. Before his eyes, her image seemed to lose resolution, details blurring until she resembled a rough sketch more than a person. "Dr. Tanner!" He reached for her, but his hand passed through where her shoulder should have been. She wasn't just flat. She was becoming insubstantial. Sign turned back to the sphere in horror. The loss of dimensionality was accelerating. He could feel it in his own body, his lungs laboring to expand in 3 dimensions when reality only permitted 2. His vision narrowing as his eyeballs flattened into circles. The journal had described the purge as a reset, a way to begin civilization anew. But this wasn't renewal. This was erasure, with the last of his dimensional strength. Sane grasped the obsidian sphere. It burned cold against his palms, the sensation almost nostalgic, a reminder of when touch had depth and texture. If the society had started this, perhaps their tool could end it. The sphere pulsed beneath his touch, and Sane had the distinct sensation of something ancient and aware turning its attention toward him. Not a machine, but an entity, a consciousness that had been waiting, perhaps for centuries, for someone to recognize the terrible mistake. "You understand," a voice whispered directly into his mind. The cycle was corrupted, the purge incomplete. "How do I stop it?" Sane gasped, feeling his vocal cords flattening, his words becoming as thin as paper. The purge cannot be stopped, but it can be completed correctly. The sphere began to glow with an impossible light. Not white, or any color Sign could name, but something that suggested all colors at once, dimensions beyond the 3 he knew. "Choose what remains," the voice commanded. "What essence of your world must survive to build anew?" Sign understood then. The society hadn't intended to destroy reality, but to curate it, to select which elements would survive the transition to the next cycle. Their failure had been one of judgment, not mechanism. As his consciousness expanded into the sphere, Sayin saw the entirety of his fading world. Every person, place, and memory collapsing into flatness. And beyond that, he glimpsed other worlds, other cycles, stretching back through countless iterations of humanity. With his final three-dimensional thought, Sane made his choice. Hey, Jimmy, you still reading that comic? Mrs. Abernathy called from behind the drugstore counter. Those new Detective Sane stories are all black and white. Now that the war's on, not much to look at. 12-year-old Jimmy Marshall didn't look up from the final panels of Detective Sane and the Mystery of the Vanishing World. He traced his finger over the stark black and white illustrations, the flattened city, the mysterious sphere, the hero's final choice. "I don't mind, Mrs. Abernathy," he replied. "The story's better than the colors, anyway." He turned to the last page, where Detective Sane stood before a newly dimensional world. Color bleeding back into the edges of the panel as rivers began to flow again and people regained their solid forms. The final caption read, "And so Sane chose to preserve not knowledge or power, but the capacity for dimension itself, the ability to grow, to change, to become more than flat impressions on a finite page." Jimmy closed the comic carefully. Outside the shop window, a military convoy rumbled past, headed for the docks and then across the Atlantic. The world was at war, resources were scarce, and luxuries like colored ink for comics were among the first casualties on the home front. But as he stepped outside into the April sunshine, Jimmy couldn't help seeing the world a little differently, noticing the subtle depths and dimensions that existed even in the harshest of times, the colors that persisted even when they couldn't be printed on a page. He tucked the comic securely under his arm and headed home, unaware that in his hands he carried one of the last remaining artifacts of a civilization that had faded not once, but countless times before, each cycle preserved paradoxically within the flat, two-dimensional pages of a story that refused to be forgotten. The betrayal. The door to the kitchen flew open and hit the side of the refrigerator with a loud thud. Cold air rushed in. "You rotten bitch. I trusted you." Brock McCarthy stood in the doorway with his shoulders squared and fists clenched. "How could you do that to me?" His nostrils flared as he shook his head. Stunned, Clara Simmons gasped when she heard the commotion. After she regained her composure, she bristled at the hateful accusation. She placed the half-empty dinner plate she was holding in the sink. Staring into his brown eyes, she asked, "What the hell are you talking about?" After 2 years of living together, she knew Brock's temper, but this deranged outburst was worse than usual. "You know damn well what I'm talking about. My secret. I told you never to tell anyone about that shit. I didn't say anything to anybody." Her words were unhurried but emphatic. "You had to tell somebody something. When I went to the back door after work, all the guys started busting my balls, dropping hints, talking shit like they knew things. All of them acted like they knew something. And you're the only one I talked to about that shit. Brock unzipped his black leather jacket and draped it on the back of a kitchen chair. Why did you do it? You're nuts. Or you're drunk. I didn't say anything. They glared at each other as a chilling silence gradually filled the room. Hell, I'm not even close to being drunk. I had to leave the bar before I could finish my pitcher. It was impossible to tell what Brock was more agitated about, leaving cold beer or defending himself against the swirling speculations about his hidden, checkered past. Did you bother to ask how your drinking buddies heard about your precious secret? Her voice was soft, as if asking a child if they had finished their homework. I didn't have to. Damn it. You are the only one who knows. With unhurried steps, Clara walked around the kitchen table, pulling on the back of the chair. The faint scraping of the wooden legs against the linoleum broke the quiet, like fingernails on a chalkboard. She took a seat and cast her gaze towards her angry boyfriend. That's not exactly true. She paused as their eyes momentarily locked. Is it? The tone of her now controlled voice was made bitter by a toxic mix of scorn and controlled rage. Those women know. After a long pause to emphasize her point, she said, "Trust me, they really know." Like air escaping from a balloon, Brock's body went limp. Without making a sound, he fell into the chair across from her, searching her face for a clue about her intentions. Look, you chose to tell me about your twisted secret. It was your choice. Clara's voice was cold. And I haven't told a soul since. But now I'm wondering what else you might be hiding. Wait, that's not fair. Fair? Fair? You have the balls to mention fair to me? That's laughable. You bust in here and accuse me of betraying you without a shred of evidence. I've always told you everything. Brock reached up and scratched the scruffy hair on his face. I didn't have to tell you about the women and what happened. But I did. And now you expect me to carry the same guilt? Clara adjusted her glasses. No, of course not. It's not guilt, exactly. Not really. It's more like, I don't know how to explain it. They sat listening to the faint sound of the small clock on the oven, ticking away the minutes, like the shattered pieces of their failing relationship. Absent-mindedly, Clara used her thumb to wipe the pepper dust off the shaker sitting in the middle of the table. Do you think one of the women, moved here? He took a long time to answer, as if he hated the power of what truth might do to him. It's possible. He bit the inside of his cheek a few times while he thought. Clara leaned back in her chair. So, what will you do? I mean, if you see one of them? She stifled a yawn as her composure returned. There's another possibility. What if one of those women sent their boyfriend to find you? Like a trapper beating the bushes to get the snakes to show where they're hiding. Brock twisted his face into a scowl after he deciphered her meaning. Crap. He leaned back into his chair. He sat silent for a long moment. I've never even thought about that. It was always a slim possibility, I guess. Well, I think you had better start thinking about that possibility, because I never said a word to anyone, ever. Why would I? Brock pursed his lips and folded his arms in resignation. Holy shit. What are we going to do now? We? Are you seriously thinking this problem is a we thing? I didn't have anything to do with that shit. I wasn't there. I don't even know who they are. This is your ugly history, not mine. Always has been. I thought we were a couple. I thought we were, getting serious. Brock's voice conveyed desperation. Oh yeah, that was before you came in here and blamed me for something I didn't do. I don't think I want to stick around to see what else you might blame me for. No, babe, wait. You can't do that. Really? I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Well, I guess you should have thought about that before you shoved open the kitchen door with a heart full of hate. I went from bitch to babe in 5 minutes. And I don't want to see how long it'll take next time. She placed her hands flat on the table. Calmly, she rose and ambled across the kitchen towards the bedroom. Stopping halfway, she turned and said, I don't want to become another secret in your long history of betrayals. Where I come from, love is all about trust. And you just lost mine. And now you're losing me. She turned and went into the bedroom and slammed the door. A rose-scented Santa Claus. Mrs. Claus doesn't bake cookies. She doesn't prepare any dessert at all, for that matter. Her husband eats enough cookies to last him 1 year on his journey around the globe. Instead, she cracks 5 eggs, 3 for him, 2 for her, spreads butter on toast, tosses a bowl of fruit for them to share, and prepares her husband's favorite, a mug of coffee with frothed reindeer milk and candy cane crumbles on top. It always gives him a nice boost before the annual Christmas soiree, which is hosted by the elves, forever adorers, kiss-asses, another might say, of the man in the red suit. This cup of joe will definitely give him a kick. The clock reads 5:35 a.m. He should be arriving soon, no later than 6, she hopes. If he's on time, their Christmas tradition can go on as usual. In the first 25 years of their marriage, she'd hear the reindeer and their jingling bells land on their cottage's immense sleighway at 6 on the dot. For the last 8 years, he was always 10, 20, even 30 minutes late. Old age, explained the elder elf through the years. She scoffed openly at his comment. 65 was not that old. Last year, Mr. Claus arrived an hour late due to a highly rare reindeer injury. Plight, the Rudolph of the group, There were others with noses to guide the way, but Rudolph was the original, had broken a leg. Before he landed, Mrs. Claus was so distraught by her husband's recurring tardiness that she'd thrown the entire breakfast in the trash and dumped the coffee in the sink. 5:45 now. She should soon be hearing Santa's ho 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 as he slows his sleigh in the sky. She doesn't. But her anger is now water underneath a frozen layer of cool indifference. She grabs the coffee pot and pours 2 cups now, prepares his, then lays it on the pine tree-shaped coaster. 5:50. 6:00. 6:01. She waits at the table. At 6:25, Santa Claus lands. From inside, she hears the elves cheering, clapping, celebrating. No doubt they're all wearing their best elf suits, midnight black, and made of pure wool, ready for the party that starts in 45 minutes. Mrs. Claus stopped going out to greet her husband 3 years ago. Old age and whatnot, she told the elder elf with a stiff, sweet smile, whose reply was merely an awkward smile and hesitant nod. Mrs. Claus waits at the circular, wooden table on the chair that faces the door of their small cottage. Just a minute later, better to walk past those elves, lest they talk your ear off. The door opens, and in walks the man of the hour. Noel, known to her and some close friends, smiles. She knows what he's going to say next, because it's the same thing he says every year. Mrs. Claus deepens and roughens her voice to imitate her husband as he says, "I can't wait to shave this damn thing off." Noel laughs, and she does too. She still does love this man very much. Nothing, no one, could ever snatch that feeling away from her. Noel loves being Santa. She still remembers the pride on his face, mixed with shock and sudden nerves, when the elf jury chose him for the task. This was way back when he was Noel Fable, and she, Winterfrost, back when they'd only stolen a kiss or two and were too shy to hold hands in public. She'd never imagined she'd be Mrs. Claus, and certainly never thought about how their lives could look 28 years later. They selected him just 1 hour after Nick Claus had passed away at 75. It was, and had to be, a swift process. She'd wondered what it'd feel like if her husband died, and just 60 minutes later, people were lining up to replace him. She also thought about who it'd be. Perhaps Elliot Ryder, the young man who'd fixed up Plight's leg last year. She quite liked Elliot. He was the only one who was honest with her and told her that the only reason Plight would injure his leg, the others left unscathed, would be because he didn't want to land on a certain roof. Despite popular belief, reindeer are not loyal to the man with the bag himself, but rather the cause of Christmas itself. In fact, she too might say that she was dedicated to the cause, if need be. So why wouldn't he want to land? Elliot had asked her. She'd merely shrugged, because that was none of his business. She'd be replaced too, of course. If the new Santa had a honey, then it'd happen immediately. If he was single and ready to jingle, then later. But she'd be stripped of the name Claus and forced to move on. At least she'd get to keep their home and have a comfortable place to grieve. It was a quick and cruel but necessary procedure. Christmas didn't wait for anybody, and the North Pole was legally required to meet those children's demands. "Come sit, my love," Mrs. Claus says, patting the seat of the empty chair beside her. Noel obeys and moves closer to her. Before sitting, he leans in and gives her a sweet kiss on the cheek. The first time that Mrs. Claus smelled roses off his puffy white beard, she didn't question it. The third time, it had made her eyebrows furrow, but they'd had breakfast, and she'd moved on. The fourth time, suspicion came. Only confirmation followed in the next years. A perfume that didn't belong to her, that didn't actually exist on the North Pole at all, where there were only cinnamon, hot chocolate, pine, and other related scents. The tardiness and the incident last year only added to the pile of evidence. He threw in the logs and the kindling. Add a flame, and what else could you get but a fire? The scent now makes her knuckles turn white as snow against the mug's handle. "My favorite part of the day," Noel says as he finally sits. He reaches for the coffee cup, and Mrs. Claus only stares, with a smile that looks like a sticker someone threw on her face and stuck. It doesn't take one sip. He tells her about his night, skipping over certain details, she imagines. Not that she wants to know. And together, they eat. She finds that she has no trouble swallowing the eggs, chewing on the toast, even sipping her coffee. Not even when Noel starts slurring his words while talking about the best cookie of the night. She places the mug down with a soft thump as the slurs become choking sounds. She notices drops of milk on his mustache then. He looks at her with a confused expression, and those still gloved hands go to his neck. But Mrs. Claus doesn't move. Not even when he calls out for a name that is not her own. The smell of roses is still fresh under her nose when Mr. Claus starts turning purple. Santa falls off the chair, and Mrs. Claus, like any good wife, screams and calls for help. "Mother, dearest. Annie, I'm so sorry. I totally forgot about this weekend. I'm really unwell, so I probably couldn't have made it anyway. If you can wait, I'll help you next weekend. I promise. Love you, XXX." My heart sank. Sarah was unreliable, and she does this all the time, but I really thought she'd come through this time. I suppose I thought that every time, but this time I was hoping it would be different. I knew deep down that our friendship was slipping away. We both led totally different lives, but I felt it would be quite a shame to let a near 20-year friendship fade into nothing. It was clear where she stood on it, however, as she was putting less and less effort into her lies. Next weekend would turn into next month, and next month would turn into after Christmas. By the time we got round to it, when she had a weekend where she had nothing else to do, my Gran's old house would be commandeered by rats, bugs, and all manner of weeds. It was now going to be a long, lonely 3-hour drive across the country to New Biggin, and an even lonelier weekend clearing out the house. Part of the reason I'd wanted her to come was that I didn't want to stay there overnight on my own. It was the creepiest place I'd ever been. Every summer up until I turned 14, I was forced to spend 2 weeks there while my parents flew off to some tropical destination for a break. It wasn't until I disappeared the night before I was due to be dropped off that my parents took my complaints seriously. I left them a ransom note stating that I was not in trouble and that I was safe at a friend's house. I informed them that I would return home the next morning at 11, an hour before they were due to leave for the airport. When I returned the following morning, at exactly 11 a.m., my mother was already sat in the passenger seat of the car. As I walked up the drive, my father came out of the front door to meet me. He handed me the house key and an envelope, and looked at me with a sly grin. "Your mother is upset, as you can see. She wants to leave early." He put his hand on my shoulder. "I know you hate going to your Gran's. Quite frankly, I don't blame you. But you're on your own for 2 weeks now, kid. You've got the key. There's 200 quid in there, and that has to last you until we get back. If you starve, then that's on you. And no parties, or I will personally deliver you to your Gran's house and leave you there for a month." He hugged me and kissed me on the head, then got in the car. My mother didn't look at me as they backed off the drive. After a few hours of flicking between podcasts and the radio, I pulled onto the narrow country road that led to the house. It hadn't rained for a few days, but somehow the road was thick with wet mud, and the many potholes that lined it were filled with brown water. I drove carefully along for about 15 minutes until I rounded the last bend and saw the small tree that stretched over the low stone wall of the front garden. As I drove up the driveway, I had to fight every fiber of my being to not reverse out of there and leave the bloody house to rot. Why was I even here? Through some weird sense of loyalty to my mother, a woman that only saw her own mother through proxy, like some old billionaire that can't be bothered to attend board meetings. She had always refused to go to my Gran's house, and also refused to explain to me why. She left as soon as she was able, and moved to the nearest city, Soon after, she met my father, and the rest is history. As far as I could remember, the only time she has been back since was to see my grandfather on his deathbed. Even then, she refused to stay over. I got out of the car and towed my way around more potholes to the large red front door. I pulled out the large brass key I was sent by the lawyers and opened it. It was made from a thick slab of heavy wood. I had to use my shoulder and put all of my weight into it to push it open. Once inside, I struggled to see anything. Dusk was arriving outside, and the windows were so thick with grime that the little daylight that was left was barely getting through. I pulled out my key ring and turned on my small travel torch when something to the right of me caught the corner of my eye. Something moved. I know it did. The painting above the radiator moved its head. I swear it did. But it couldn't have. Obviously. It's a painting. My hand were tingling, and my heart felt like it was climbing a hill in a spin class. I kept the torch shining on the painting and took a few deep breaths, holding for 4 seconds and then exhaling. The painting did not move Annie. I made my way down the hallway to the main room. I retraced my childhood steps towards the large lamp in the corner of the room. I would sneak down here in the middle of the night and read all of my grandfather's old books. The only thing I actually wanted from this clear-out was his original copy of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I would read it every summer. It was the only thing I looked forward to. I found the lamp. I fumbled around with the switch as my hands were still sweaty. When I eventually got it on, my heart sank. The bookshelf was empty. There is very little dust on the shelves, which means it was recently cleared. As far as I was told, I had the only key, so either I was being lied to or someone had broken in. My only hope was that they were in the cupboard at the bottom. I looked in with my pocket torch and was met with spider webs. I made to stand up, but something stopped me in my tracks. I froze to the spot. My eyes widened to the point where I thought they might fall out. I held my breath. Silence surrounded me until I heard it again. It pierced through my chest. I wanted to scream, to heave open the huge door and leave without looking back. But something kept me there. I slowly turned around. I tried to silently creep through the room, over to the bottom of the large wooden staircase in the middle of the grand hallway. But with every step came a creak from the ancient floorboards. Each creak of the floorboards seemed to reverberate up my spine. My head was fizzing. I reached the entrance back into the hallway, and I could still hear the laugh. It was coming from upstairs. I was drenched with sweat. I could almost feel the drops leaving my pores. My cortisol levels must have been breaking all sorts of records. This is insane. Why am I going up the stairs? At the top of the stairs, the main bedroom and the bathroom were to the right. On the left was my mother's old bedroom, the bedroom that I inherited during those dreaded summers. I waited at the top and held my breath, listening for the laughter. If this was all a game by some silly country kids, they would be lucky to leave with all of their fingers. After a few seconds, I heard it. It was coming from my mother's old room. Enough sneaking about, I leapt up the final stair and burst into the room. Empty. I listened again, but the laughter had stopped. I shone the torch around the room. I had to take a second to think back, to make sure I was remembering things right, as the room looked totally different to the last time I was here. It had been turned into a shrine for my mother. There was pictures of her everywhere, some with her parents, some with my father. There was one of her holding me as a newborn, some with her and friends. All of her old toys were dotted around the room on shelves and drawers. Old medals and school certificates were stuck to the walls. I didn't understand. Why would my grandmother do this? My mother always told me she was cold and distant, never showed any real affection. I always believed her, as that was exactly how she was with me. This made no sense, but who else would do it if it wasn't her? I picked up a photo of my mother as a baby. I looked exactly like her at that age. I almost had time to form a smile before being shocked so much. I dropped the picture and smashed the glass. Bright lights were flashing in through the window, almost as if someone was speaking Morse code. I made my way over to the window and saw that the light was coming from the headlights of my car. Shit. I must have left them on. I hope the battery isn't going flat. I rummaged around in my pockets for my keys until I realized I had them in my hand as I was using the pocket torch I made to turn around, when I felt an ice-cold hand grip the back of my neck. I swung my arm around violently, elbow first, hoping to connect hard with whoever had grabbed me. I didn't connect, so I swung my arms around, hoping to land any sort of blow, just enough for me to create some space and get out. I swung and kicked, but hit nothing. There was no one there. I shook my head and repeated the same breathing exercises as I had performed in front of the painting downstairs before walking over to the door. I need to leave now. And I do mean now. Don't leave me, Annie. My fingers froze around the door handle as if it was covered in super glue. Please don't leave me, Annie. Stay here and play with me. I shone the torch up to where I heard the voice. I tried to scream. I had to scream. If I didn't scream, my head was going to explode. My mother was sat up in her bed, clutching her childhood doll. Don't go out there. If you go out there, you'll die. I don't want you to die, Annie. I want you to stay here with me forever. The scream finally left me. It left me with more force than anything I have ever felt in my life. The whole room seemed to shake. I screamed until every last breath had left my lungs. Then I threw open the door so hard it almost came off. Its hinges. I sprinted down the stairs, jumping down the last 4. I reached the front door. I hadn't locked it when I'd came in, so I twisted the large brass handle and pulled. I couldn't use my weight to push it open this time, so I opened it as far as I could, then squeezed my fingers into the opening so I could have a better grip on the door to pull. I heard the laughter again. It was getting louder, which meant it was getting closer. "Annie, don't be silly. You'll die out there. Stay with me." I pulled and pulled. I eventually put my foot in the gap and pushed the door back with my heel. Once there was enough space, I squeezed through, then sprinted over to my car, swinging the door open, then diving in. I turned the key once, twice. On the 3rd time it worked. I put it into gear, ripped the handbrake down, span around, and drove straight through the closed gate. The casualty has been identified as Annie Jones after her car skidded off a country road and collided head-on with a tree. The incident is made even more tragic, as she had been driving back home after visiting her late grandmother's house to deal with her estate due to the tragic deaths of her mother and father the previous year. Our thoughts go out to her close friends and family at the unfortunate time. Banshee. The soft cushions of the leather couch cradled Kim's sweaty body. Her vision was fuzzy and dark, like looking through smudged sunglasses. She blinked rapidly, hoping to remedy her skewed sight. Then she heard voices, male and female. Yes, I did call 911. She needs to get better mascara. There's no way that was mascara. Kim recognized those voices. She must be on the couch in her office. But why? Well, what could it have been? Never heard anyone scream like that before. I know. It was unnatural. She must have had some kind of seizure. Yeah, it seemed her dog sensed it was going to happen. Oh, definitely. Don't worry, Kim. I'll take care of Groot while you're at the hospital. You won't believe this, but I had my first hot flash last night. It was so disgusting. Kim wasn't sure if that was TMI, but she was the broker and founder of this real estate firm, so she had the right to say whatever in the hell she wanted. However, she did find it uncomfortable to talk about. She just couldn't stop thinking about last night's sweat fest. When did you have your last period? Shelley asked. Kim scanned the faces of the 12-member team of real estate agents gathered at the conference table. Mostly men. Men didn't want to talk about this crap. Kim had never felt comfortable talking about female plumbing issues either. And this was not the time, nor the place, nor the company to speak of such things. She shouldn't have started this conversation. Just not thinking clearly today. Moving on. Jeffrey, you have a new listing? Subject changed. Every day was Bring Your Dog to Work Day. Kim brought Groot, a 2-year-old male Wheaton Terrier. Other team members brought their dogs as well, and all the canines got along. During the Monday meeting, Groot lay in his bed behind Kim's chair at the head of the table. Suddenly, he started whining, high-pitched and annoying. All conversation stopped. Groot went to Kim and pawed at her lap. Still whining, she rubbed his head. "What is it?" "What's—" Kim sucked in a loud breath, stood straight up, as if her spine had instantly become a metal rod. Then she started a low, guttural growl. She began to drool, long strands of saliva slinking from the corners of her mouth. People gasped. Kim faced the table, placed her hands on it, and crawled on top. She sat on her heels, stretched her torso and arms forward, and pointed at Jeffrey, who was seated at the other end of the table. Her index fingers were side by side, lips parted, teeth gnashing. Kim let out a shriek that had the agents covering their ears. Thick, black tears oozed from her eyes, made mad streaks down her ruddy cheeks, and dribbled onto the table like globs of old motor oil. All the dogs in the building barked. Most of the agents sped from the room. Jeffrey plastered himself against the wall behind his seat and stared at Kim, his eyes and mouth wide open. The shriek lasted for at least 60 seconds. Kim collapsed onto the table. At the hospital, Kim was informed that her scans were clear. The results from the cultures of the tears would take a few days to come back. The doctor had no answers for her regarding the shriek. She stayed overnight and then went home at 10:25 a.m. Kim had just put on pajamas and was ready to relax when she received a phone call from Shelley, one that put her in a fetal position. Heading south on I-85 in his very expensive, high-performance BMW, Jeffrey was breaking the speed limit, 10 miles over. It was no big deal, but it was raining. He was in the fast lane, as always. He rarely got to drive his car the way he wanted. It could go from 0-60 in under 3 seconds. Jeffrey eyed the long stretch of asphalt ahead of him and listened to Hush by Deep Purple, as loud as the car's sound system would allow. He was about to gun it when he saw a sedan slide from the northbound lane, coast through the grassy median, and head straight for him. Shit! Jeffrey stepped on the gas. The sliding car missed him, but wrecked into the truck behind him. Looking in his rearview mirror at the carnage of the colliding metal and glass, Jeffrey yelled, "Holy hell!" That's when he started to lose control of his vehicle, zigzagging, the road water washing up onto his windows from the right and the left. And then everything in Jeffrey's world stopped. At home, Kim sat on her sofa, weeping. Her father sat beside her, hugging her shoulders. "I can't believe this." "I know," said Marcus. Then he let out a hefty sigh. "I have something to tell you." "What?" "It's about your mother." Kim scowled at her father. They never talked about her mother. It's about her death. You want to talk about that now? Yes. It relates to all you're going through. What? How? Marcus covered his eyes with his hand. How do I put this? Your mother suffered from the same affliction you're suffering from now. He looked directly at her. The shriek, the black tears. You're what is known as a banshee. Kim stared at him as if he had grown another head. That's not funny, Dad. I'm totally serious. Banshees shriek at people who are about to die. It's why your mother killed herself. She took a good, long look at his aged, hard-lined face. He wasn't lying. She should be mad that he hadn't told her this long ago. She wasn't. Couldn't be. She was too numb and too tired to feel anger toward him. Be prepared. People at work will stare at you. They'll talk about you, wonder things about you, even be afraid of you. Is that what happened to Mom? Yes. She began to cry again. I'm so sorry, honey. After 10 minutes of weeping, Kim drank the hot tea her father had made. Groot went to her and sat beside her on the couch, which reminded her, Dad, Groot whined at me just before it happened. Yeah, nearby animals can sense the episodes before they happen. Don't know why. I've done a lot of research, but haven't determined why that happens. What all have you discovered in your research? Well, that only women are banshees, that it starts at menopause, that you'll be a banshee until you die. Fantastic. Didn't you know this was going to happen to me? We hoped it wouldn't. Your mother's mother said it might skip a generation. Hey, well, guess what? She sipped her tea. You should have warned me. I'm so very sorry. Marcus kissed his daughter's forehead. But seriously, what good would that have done? Kim thought about that. Her only response to his question was a shrug. Kim stood in the bathroom, blowing her nose. Her father had left a few minutes ago. She was still struggling to process all he had told her, and she was seriously thinking of retiring to avoid everyone at work. She could do it. Then there was Jeffrey to think about. His funeral. Damn it. This was all too much. She had worked so hard to get to where she was in life. A multi-millionaire at age 30. One of the premier real estate brokers in Greenville, South Carolina. Now she was... what? Some kind of supernatural being? Seriously? She had so many things she still wanted to do with her career, her personal life, and perhaps with Jeffrey. Had her mother experienced similar disappointments? Kim began to cry again, but then Groot came into the bathroom and started whining. That high-pitched, annoying whine. And he pawed at her. What the hell? Kim looked at herself in the mirror. Big eyes, gritted teeth, drooling. Then the clear tears became thick and black. She pointed at herself. I wasn't expecting that. And then the shriek, shattered truths. In week 52, the little town already shimmered with the anticipation of festivities. Strings of Twinkling lights adorned street corners, their glow reflected in the frosted windows of small houses. The air was somehow alive with the scent of candied almonds, cinnamon, and vanilla, sweet bakeries waiting to be shared. Yet amidst this explosion of life and light, Henrik remained unmoved in his own house. Only now did he notice the splinters on the frames of the old windows. It irritated him. How could one have lived in a place for so long and never discover something as provocative as that? 30 years in the same house, married to a woman named Bente. She never had much interest in cleaning like most women her age had. Henrik looked up from the bed where he rested his body in the afternoon. Naps like these started to occur more often than before. Probably age, or hell knows why. The door was open, and he could see the light from the lamp in the kitchen. Very faint, but just enough to see clearly. When was the last time he changed the light bulbs? Or maybe the last time he did that? Maybe 4 years ago? Or 6? Henrik got up and walked around the house for a moment until he saw the old plates. Small teacups were there too. They had gathered dust over time. Why did she even collect them when she didn't even polish them? Wasn't that something you do when you collect all sorts of crap? Henrik took his box with pills and swallowed a handful of them with lukewarm water, and then grabbed his cigarette box. As the flame flickered to life and touched the tip of his cigarette, the first inhale hit him with a rush of warmth, pulling him out of the heavy fog of his sadness. The bittersweet wave of nostalgia washed over him, carrying flashes of his younger years, when the world was a vast, untamed promise, each day unwritten and brimming with possibilities. Now, every movement was deliberate, every breath a reminder of the disease that gripped his body, unraveling him piece by piece. The cigarette trembled in his unsteady fingers, a cruel contrast to the steady, unbroken rhythm of his past, when his hands had been strong and his future limitless. Henrik looked up at the cupboard with the plates. He no longer spared them a glance, knowing they wouldn't remain in his house much longer. The small glass doors of the cupboard did not bother to open. Come on! He got angry and used all his strength to open the cupboard until it gave out. Glass bounced and flew all over the place, and a small piece flew into his face. A second later, a small cup fell, adding china to the glass artwork on the ground. Well, said Henrik, Bente will take care of that. For a minute, Henrik wondered where she might be. But then a sudden thought struck him. Probably anyone with self-respect would be willing to spend more quality time away from his miserable presence. Carefully, as much as he could, Henrik took the plates and cups and put them down in a cardboard box. He put on his jacket and shoved the keys in the pocket of his leather jacket. It has been a few years since he didn't drive. Not that he didn't know how to. So he headed walking, went out to Red Cross shop, and handed the ladies at the counter the filled cardboard box without saying a word. Henrik stepped out into the street and saw that it was beginning to get dark. He gave a sigh of relief, as if that particular china was a burden that added more weight to his heavy enough life. It was past 3 in the afternoon, and the clouds were long and transparent. When was the last time he went out for a walk? Not recently, for sure. It was too unbearable to look at all these energetic people. Energetic enough to laugh and move around, with no rollators, and accompanied by themselves only. Each step now felt like a quiet triumph. The rhythm of his feet against the pavement was a soothing reminder that, despite the tremors and stiffness, Henrik was still moving forward, and this helped to refresh his mind. The crisp air brushed against his face, and for a moment, the simple act of walking became a victory over the weight of his condition. After about 15 minutes, Henrik walked in the dark until he saw a neon sign. He had forgotten his glasses at home, but the word bodega was big enough to read. He entered in the cozy, time-worn charm. Its low beams and dimly lit interior soaked with the stories of decades past. Henrik used to come more often, but the last time he had beer in the bodega was when his son turned 18 and the whole family celebrated. Henrik looked around to choose a spot. Faded photographs and vintage beer ads adorned the smoke-stained walls, while mismatched chairs and well-worn tables lent the space some hygge-lig, unpretentious air. A faint aroma of beer mingled with the occasional smell of fried food, as locals leaned on the polished but scuffed wood counter, exchanging jokes over clinking glasses. Henrik felt strange. There was only a small group of people, and the whole room smelled of something naggingly recognizable. Henrik sat down next to a lone man. Both were silent. Only their bodies felt close enough to feel each other's hollowness. Jens could hear Kim's "In a Little While" playing, and turned to the guy for some small talk. Aren't pleasantries often a way to save ourselves from being engulfed by awkward solitude? The man looked much younger. Henrik saw him drinking from a small porcelain cup, like the ones he just left off earlier. Funny, Henrik thought, and forced his eyes to focus more. He noted he wasn't a man at all. He was a teenage boy with tears in his eyes. "Are you okay, my boy?" "What's going on?" Henrik asked. The boy didn't answer, but turned around, revealing a deep gash reaching from his left shoulder to his lower back. Henrik's eyes widened. The boy stopped smiling, and his somber look turned into a gunter, empty expression. He collapsed to the ground with a heavy thud. Henrik noticed that the boy had a guas on the inside of his jacket. He grabbed it abruptly, without anyone noticing. Henrik didn't have his phone with him, so he asked one of the people in the bar to call the police and pointed to the body. When Henrik opened the door, the wind blew in his face. Rain poured in, and the weather was completely different from just a couple of minutes ago. The sky was entirely black, and the sounds of screams were coming from the distance. Henrik was following the wails, not actually sure where he was heading to. He had almost reached home when he saw two individuals in front of his neighbor's house. They looked like thieves, and when he fixed his gaze, he saw they had weapons in their hands and looked dangerous. They were murderers. Henrik stepped back and was about to hide behind a large willow tree when they noticed him. Henrik took the boy's gun and readied to fire. To his surprise, the gun was empty, and he panicked. Henrik could hear his own snorting breath over the wind. He couldn't run. He couldn't hide. So he just sat quietly on the ground, putting the gun down in despair. Henrik saw a red car driving up the dirt road. It stopped so suddenly that it skidded and slid into the nearby ditch. Henrik felt the weight of his decisions and his fractured memories pressing down on him. His life had been a blur of rancor, loneliness, and regret. But now it was ending in chaos while the sirens grew louder and armed men scooted closer. The middle-aged woman who came with the red car, Bente, rushed toward Henrik, screaming at the officers who found an unarmed ill man announced missing. "You're late," Henrik muttered, closing his eyes and lying on the grass. But now it seemed she didn't hear him. He got lost twice last week. Again, without the phone. Everything started to fall apart after we lost our young love, uttered Bente through tears while they were lifting Henrik and heading to the ambulance. The two people, his neighbors, helped Bente to collect a few scattered pieces of china, and no one knew why Henrik had a porcelain loop handle around his ring finger. The flash, "You're lucky to be alive, Mr. Henderson." They all told me that. Every doctor, nurse, and specialist that came into my hospital room. God, I remember that much. And they weren't wrong. I had flew right out of the windshield of my buddy Dave's car. I hardly remember the night or the accident, but I know we had been drinking, and he was driving. We crashed into another driver at an intersection. No one else survived. I remember waking up the next morning to the beeping of a heart monitor. I remember the look on my wife Rachel's face, her eyes swollen and red from crying, and her telling me over and over again how she thought she was going to lose me. She wasn't in the car with us, and I was thankful for that, because that's the day she told me she was pregnant with our first. I truly was lucky to be alive, and I swore up and down to her that day that I was going to be the husband she deserved. We had hardly been married a year at that point, and I had already messed up so much. But that day, I changed. I made it my life goal for Rachel to always know how much I loved and appreciated her. I went out on less guys' nights and let her go out for more girls' nights. I helped clean the house and cooked dinner on days she worked late. When our second child was born, I took time off work to be with her and help her. When a promotion for her meant more hours, I quit my job to stay home with the kids while she built her career. And I loved every minute of it. Watching the kids grow up into people gave me so much joy. I knew how lucky I was. But when Rachel would come home after a long day to a hot meal waiting on the table for her, and hearing her say, "How did I get so lucky, Sean?" Nothing beats that. My family meant the world to me, and anything I could do to make their lives better made me happy. When the kids, Leah and Robbie, got a bit older, and both were in elementary school, I decided it was time for me to go back to work. I took a job in construction, building things with my hands. Work I could be proud of. It paid off, too, because over the years, I was able to renovate our own home. It was a slow process, doing it myself, one room at a time. At one point, I was sure Rachel was going to divorce me. When the back patio project took a bit longer than I had anticipated and left us without a back door for a couple weeks. But she sure has enjoyed the backyard since then. Their smiles were all I needed to keep going with these projects. Leah got her own ensuite bathroom. For Robbie, a gaming den in the basement. And Rachel had her dream kitchen. 10 years after we bought the house, it looked completely different. I was proud of the life, the family, and the home I had built. I truly was the luckiest man alive. Or so I thought, until the headaches started. The first one happened one evening when I was making dinner. It was just Robbie and I home. Rachel was working late, and Leah was at rehearsals for her high school's play. I was making my famous coq au vin, a dish that took a while to prepare, since I had the extra time. Robbie was sitting at the island doing his homework, so he had to witness the whole thing. I had turned on the oven light so I could take a peek inside, which I guess triggered it. I remember thinking the light was so bright, brighter than usual. And then, nothing. I blacked out. It was only for a couple minutes, but it was enough to spook poor Robbie. I could hear him shouting, "Dad! Dad!" I got up off the floor and reassured him that I was okay. Later, during dinner, when we were discussing what had happened, I could see that Rachel was concerned. She wanted me to go see the doctor, but I insisted I was fine. She made the kids, and I promise that if this ever happened again, we'd call an ambulance, or at least make a doctor's appointment. The second time it happened, it was maybe about 6 weeks later. I was at a job site, and a coworker turned on a floodlight. I could see it getting brighter, and this time I heard a blaring noise, but couldn't make out where it was coming from. Everything went black, and I could hear him shouting my name. He told me I was out for only around 5 or 10 minutes. Again, I insisted I was fine, but my boss gave the rest of the day off anyway and told me to take the following day, too, if I needed it. Not wanting to worry Rachel, I chose not to tell her about it. And like an idiot, I didn't make a doctor's appointment. I went to work the next day and felt great. It was a few months before it happened again. And this time, I couldn't hide it from Rachel because she was there when it happened. It was late. The kids were in bed, and Rachel and I were in the living room. We had just finished watching a movie, and she got up to turn on the lamp. I could hear her talking about the movie, but I was fixated by the light. It got brighter, and I was trying to figure out if it had just moved or if it was my imagination when the noise started. "What is that noise?" I tried to ask her, but I don't know if all the words came out before it all went black again. When I came back to, Rachel was already on the phone with an ambulance dispatcher. I managed to calm her down enough to agree that the ambulance wasn't necessary, on the condition that I would call our doctor the next morning to make an appointment. Luckily, the dispatcher was on my side, or else I don't think she would have went for it. As promised, I called to make an appointment first thing the next morning. It was scheduled for less than a week away, but I didn't make it until then, before it happened for the last time. All I remember is waking up in the middle of the road and not being able to see anything except bright headlights from a car. My ears were ringing, and the sound of the car horn was fading in and out. I think I heard an ambulance siren and someone calling my name before blacking out again, but it was hard to be sure. When I woke up again, I was in a hospital bed. There was a woman sitting in a chair who looked angry, or maybe annoyed, and it wasn't until she spoke that I even realized it was Rachel. She looked different. Her hair was darker and shorter. I thought I must have been in a coma for a while, and she let her roots grow in. "Welcome back," she told me, but her welcome didn't sound warm. I asked her if I had been in a coma, and she laughed a little before quickly suppressing it. "No, Sean, you were not in a coma." "Ah, Mr. Henderson, there you are." A nurse bustled into the room. "I hope you'll stay with us this time." "What?" I looked at Rachel, who just stared at me, emotionless. "You've been in and out, mostly out, of consciousness for a few hours now," the nurse explained. Your wife is a lucky lady to still have you here. The luckiest girl alive. Rachel responded, deadpanned. The nurse didn't seem to notice Rachel's lack of enthusiasm and went on to tell me that there were no broken bones or anything major beyond some bruising, and I could likely go home the following morning. Going home is when things really started to not make sense. For one, none of the renovations were done. It was like it was when we first bought it, which prompted me to ask Rachel if I had a job. "You're joking, right?" She laughed, but didn't answer the question. I was starting to wonder if I had somehow traveled back in time. But my hypothesis was debunked when Robbie came in the front door. He looked about the same as I remembered, except that there was about another 20 pounds of him. He asked Rachel if she could drive him to hockey practice. "You play hockey?" I asked him. Yeah. Mom told me about your accident, but said you were okay. You don't have amnesia or anything, do you?" No, not to worry, Robbie. I'm doing fine. Just a little fuzzy." "Cool," he nodded. "It's just Rob now, though. Mom, are you ready to go? I'm going to be late." "Where is your sister?" I asked, but quickly remembered she probably had rehearsals. "Who knows?" Rachel sighed. "Probably off with that scumbag boyfriend of hers again. I hate that kid's face. He's such a loser. I don't know what she even sees in him. Let's go, Rob. Boyfriend. I mumbled to myself as the door closed behind them, leaving me behind in a house that didn't feel like my own. What kind of alternate reality am I in? Am I dreaming? Is this a prank? When no one came out from behind a fake wall with cameras, I decided that it was not, in fact, a prank, and that I needed to look to information, clues, something to tell me just what in the heck was going on here. It was getting dark, and I hadn't found anything except our legitimate birth certificates, tucked away in an old photo album. Some memories I had, and others I didn't. I decided to cook up a quick pasta for everyone, but Rachel and Robbie, or Rob, stopped for burgers on their way home, and Leah didn't get in until hours later. When I asked her where she'd been, she just gave me a look and went upstairs. "Why didn't you back me up?" I asked Rachel. "It's not worth the energy to argue with her," she responded without looking up from her phone. "I went for a walk to try to clear my head, which didn't work. And when I came back, Rachel was already in bed. I don't know if she was sleeping or just pretending to not notice when I slid under the blanket beside her and said goodnight. In the morning, I got up before everyone else and made breakfast, a feeble attempt to make things normal. Robbie, or Rob, was the only one who seemed to appreciate it. "Oh, sweet," he said, loading a plate with enough bacon, eggs, and pancakes to feed an orphanage. Leah nibbled on a piece of toast, and Rachel just sipped her coffee, looking unimpressed. "Okay, Off to school. I can't drive you today. I have a meeting. Again, Mom, Leah whined. I hate public transit. People who take the bus are disgusting. If you want me to take you, then we have to leave now. I can take you, I offered, feeling semi-confident in my ability to drive during my current confused state. How are you going to drive if Mom has the car? She narrowed her eyes at me. I hadn't given any thought about whether I still had my truck. Trying to ignore her attitude, I changed the subject. So, when is your play? I didn't miss it, did I? What play? The one you're in at school. What is it again? Annie? Or was that last year? It's Matilda this year, right? Oh, you mean the school's stupid play? I know you, like, hit your head or whatever. But you seriously thought I'm one of those theater nerd kids? She tossed her half-eaten toast on the table and walked away. I'll be in the car. Good one, Dad, Rob-B said, shoveling the rest of what was on his plate into his mouth with a fork. You get in the car, too, Rachel told him, pouring her coffee into a travel mug. Rob-B grabbed his backpack and headed out. Wait, I called after Rachel before she left the room. What is happening here? Everything is different, but no one else seems to think so, and you don't even seem upset that I was just in an accident. She rolled her eyes. Upset? I was upset the first time, Sean. But I'm on to you now. If you want to leave this family, then do it. But don't tell me that I'm the one who's different. And for God's sake, don't be such a coward. What are you talking about? Now I was really confused. What do you mean the first time? When I was in the accident with Dave, before the kids. You weren't in an accident before the kids were born. Oh my God, I can't do this again. Right now, I'm going to be late. She turned to leave, but I grabbed her arm. Tell me, I demanded. You really don't remember? She scoffed. I loosened my grip, and she jerked away from me. A couple months ago, you started talking about going back and drove our car into a tree. Seemed like an accident at the time, but now I can see you were really trying to off yourself. Pretty sure that's what this is all about now, too. I just blinked at her. I didn't know what to say or think. She straightened her jacket and lifted her purse over her shoulder. Look, Sean, I don't know what's going on with you, and frankly, I just don't have the energy anymore. You need to get help. You think you aren't where you're supposed to be, and I get that. I do. But you have to accept that this is your life, and it's what you make it. She sighed heavily, and I could feel her exasperation. I don't want you here anymore, she continued. Please pack your things up. I have a really long day today, and I don't want to see you here when I get home. I don't care where you go. I don't care if you kill yourself. I just want you gone. And that was it. Just like that, she walked out the door. I heard the car start and drive away. I stood there. I don't know for how long, trying to process what little information I had from that brief interaction. I couldn't make heads or tails of any of it, but I knew one thing for certain. I had to get back to Rachel, and my family. Worse ways. Selena runs with a ferocity she didn't think she'd ever need again. Her feet thump, thump, thump on the ground, and her eyes search the dirty rooftop desperately for a familiar May. She knows she's taking too long. She can feel the time slipping through her fingers like grave dirt. She bursts out onto her fourth rooftop, a quick scan providing nothing. She turns around. Her ears catch onto the quietest sound, a scuff, a whimper. She runs over to the other corner of the building and checks behind a wall. There she is. May lays on the floor, cloudy eyes staring uselessly up at the sky, and her entire hand missing, blood leaking out of her at an alarming pace. Her gut is cut open and barely holding together. Her leg bent the wrong way. Blood coats her entirely. Her mouth, her neck, her chest. Selena's hand lands on his shoulder. May jumps, opening his mouth in surprise as she turns her head towards her. Selena? Her voice croaks out painfully, laced with a brittle sort of hope. Yeah, it's me, May. Hold on. Help is on the way. She'd called the ambulance as soon as she heard the news, hoping they'd be fast enough to get to her, find her, hoping she would be too. Selena carefully shifts May into her arms, getting her away from the dirty concrete, and trying desperately to stifle the blood spilling forth easily from her stomach. Selena, May says again, desperately. She says it like Selena is an angel about to bring her to salvation, as if Selena was what she needed, wanted, instead of some random punk from New York that kills people in his spare time. Instead of someone who shot a bullet at her skull. I'm sorry. May grits out, blood leaking from her lips and coating his mouth. She feels useless, hopeless as blood continues to gush, and May is the one apologizing instead of her, the self-sacrificial dumbass she is. No, May, you don't get to say that. You stay with me, you hear? You stay right here with me. Her voice shakes, and she feels untethered, like everything is slipping away from her again. She runs her hands over May's unbroken arm, trying to ground the dying girl, trying to bring her back to the world of the living. Please, not again. May opens her mouth and breaks into loud, shattering coughs, blood dribbling down his chin even more. She shakes her, rougher than she probably should, trying to make her come back, make her stop drifting away, even when held beneath the calluses of her palms. May whines in pain. Come on, May. You can't go yet. You've got people to save. You've got friends who need you. Silena needs her, and yet May is leaving. She thinks of Jason and of her brother, Leo. They need her too. Need her like the air in their lungs, like the blood in their veins. Blood that May is covered in. May, please, hold on a bit longer. You can't leave me yet. Who else is going to knock the gun out of my hand? You promised. May we would live happily once this war is over. I haven't heard enough moral preaching yet. Come on. She's pleading, begging, praying to a God she no longer believes in. It's too sudden, too soon. She can't lose someone again. She can't. She'd listen to 1,000 hours of bull crap if it meant May would just live. If it meant May would continue to lecture her and annoy her and be beside her, side breathing and smiling. May's shaking hand reaches up to his shirt and latches on, staining it with her blood. She can hear the sirens getting louder, closer. See, Silena. May's voice is scratchy, pained, weak. Shut up, May. Don't talk. Just stay awake for me. They're so close. Just a little longer. She just needs to hold on a little longer. Silena. No. May can't do this to her. She can't say goodbye. She hears the weight of her name, the finality to it. The hand on her shirt slackens. Her body starts to go limp, and she can feel it. Feel the way death grips her, like it did her brother, like it did her dad. I will miss you. Silena feels her chest shudder with a sob. The tears slip freely from her cheeks. The hand reaches up again, and it's so cold against her cheeks, so cold as it wipes away her tears. She grabs it, holds on to it, like it's the last anchor she has, pressing it to her cheek in the reminder that Silena is here, that May can't leave her here all alone. May should be yelling at her, screaming at her, like she always does. She doesn't respond, even as she shakes her, doesn't move, or breathe, or smile, or yell at her. I'm sorry, May. She whispers to the sirens and the air and the quiet body before her. I'm sorry, May. May is held in her arms, and yet she is alone. She is alone. She yells at the sky, at herself, at the world. She yells, and then she cries. Her lips press softly to the cold fingers of the girl she was only just learning to care for. She gently sweeps her bloody hands through dark hair for the first and last time, slowly smooths her thumbs over those open, empty eyes and closes them against the harsh wind of the city. The paramedics storm the rooftop, and she's dragged away from the body. She doesn't stay to watch them load the body into the ambulance, doesn't stay to watch the ambulance drive off slowly. In no rush to save a dead person, she walks away to a panicked shouting. She lays down in his bed, soaked in another person's blood. She stares at the ceiling with an emptiness clawing at her heart until it drags her down into darkness. She wakes up 5 minutes before her alarm. She wakes without any sleepiness. Suddenly they're thrust into a world where she remembers the feeling of bloody hands against her cheek and the weight of a dead person in her lap. It takes her a second for the feelings to rush back, for the bone-deep exhaustion to settle familiarly in her chest, and the accompanying rage to guide her sights. She stands up as the alarm rings. A standard beep, beep, beep before she shuts it off. She looks at her hands. This gives her pause. She knows she didn't wash her hands last night, remembers the feeling of blood coating each and every finger and staining every surface she touched. Selena looks at the pristine white bed, then down at her spotless white top and clean jeans. Something is wrong. Her hand reaches for her phone, and she stares down at the date with a sinking sense of insanity. That can't be right. That's impossible. The numbers don't change. November 7th, it says, clearly, as if that makes any goddamn sense. Yesterday was November 7th. Yesterday she fell asleep, covered in blood. And yet, with a sudden ferocity, she finds her hands navigating the device, pulling up her contacts, and pressing firmly on a familiar name. The phone rings, and rings, and rings. Someone picks up. "Hello?" May says over the phone, her voice scratchy from sleep with an edge of worry. Her chest rattles with her next breath. His legs wobble, and she collapses onto her bed. "Hello?" May says louder, more alert, worried at the lack of response. "Hey," Selena says quietly. It's all she can say right now. What should one say to a dead woman, not dead? How does one cope when the woman you held till her dying breath is breathing again? "Are you okay? Do you need help?" May asks. There's shuffling over the other side of the phone. A creak. More shuffling. As if May was suiting up. "I'm fine. It's nothing," she grits out. Her chest hurts. Her eyes ache. Her head is swimming with confusion. It doesn't sound like nothing. "Where are you?" "I'm coming over." May declares like the soldier she is, always ready to help, to fight. Misclick. She grits out before she hangs up the phone. She resists the temptation to throw it. She resists the urge to scream. She knows nightmares. She has them every night. But never has one been that real. Maybe she really is going crazy. Tremors shake her body, and she can't just forget holding someone while they die. Can't forget those sightless eyes, or those cold hands, or the putrid smell of blood so strong she was swimming in it. She can't forget the sticky warmth on her hands and her chest and her cheek, on her lips. It's like Todd all over again. Except this time, she can't trust herself, can't trust what she saw and felt and heard and smelled and tasted. She tasted death. May was dead when she fell asleep. May was alive when she woke up. May is alive. Memories of the same past experience hit her like a full-speed bullet train. She's still alive. They are stuck in a time loop, and this is going to repeat. Memory of the future. Ed is looking down the cliff, watching the waves crashing on the beach. Same place he was when his baby brother went missing. His parents never spoke of it, like he never had a sibling. It is a summer night. Goes inside for dinner. No one says a word, same as usual. Ed does the dishes. His dad buries himself on the couch in front of the TV, and Mom goes to her room. Another boring evening at the Wallaces. Maybe all the answers to all of our questions are out there in the dark forest. Ed pushes aside a twig from a tree with his left hand to look ahead. It is so dark. He knows he is naked. Why would he? He wonders. It is freezing. Now he is elsewhere, in front of a shed. On the other side, he simply knows there are three beings, which could pass off as triplets, all looking the same, except the one in the middle seems to be a female. They are facing the wall that takes to the woods. Their oval heads are almost a triangle, with a pointy chin. The nipples of the both males have a pyramidal shape. The females are round. The three of them appear to be wearing a silvery overall, orange latex gloves up to their elbows, some work boots. Only those aren't brown or black, but in the same silvery tone. Or are they? Their actual feet. They got only 2 toes, the eyes completely white, no pupils or lids, and pointy ears, like they were elves from a fairy tale. They seem to albinos, the skin so white. They are staring at Ed like the shed was gone. He can also see them clearly. The walls appear invisible. Ed doesn't know what to do. No matter, though, because he suddenly realizes, even if he wanted to move, or scream, or run, he couldn't. They wouldn't let him. Ed is back in bed. Was it a dream? Whatever it was, he can tell inside that shed there was a time machine. A young boy went there every night to build it, so he could get back the girl that ditched him. He was too. A lone one. Ed goes to school like it's any other day. Does not pay attention in classes. He looks out the window and sees the boy that built the time machine. He is a mysterious one, skipping stones at some lake. Back home, Ed is sitting on the grass next to the cliff, still with those three beings on his mind. He wonders who they were and where. Where did they come from and why? What could they possibly want with him? Ed takes a shower, same as every afternoon, after he is done with his homework. And before they have dinner, he is finished cleaning up, and water is running down his body. He goes to open the curtain to get out, but he opens some kind of vortex. He can see a galaxy light years away. In the middle, a throne with a Nordic woman with her child in her arms. As soon as he looks into the woman's eyes, he's back in his bathroom, all silent at the table, barely looks at his plate during dinner, let alone touching his food. His parents eat and leave, as usual. His thoughts still on that woman, and the throne, and those three beings he saw the other night. Once on his bed, pulls the sheets up to cover his body, and something gets his attention. There is a huge man on the corner, both hands hugging his knees, showing some concern on his face. Wearing a robe and sandals, must be at least 13 feet tall. Turns around and looks into Ed's eyes. Ed wonders what troubles the giant. The boy that built the time machine pops into both their heads, or into the man's. But Ed can see it clearly, as if he himself was seeing the boy, carrying a box with tools, walking to the shed every night. He must have really loved that girl. Ed is certain he wasn't dreaming when he saw the giant, and neither is he now. The boy has been going to the cemetery in the middle of the night for several weeks, desecrating more than a few graves. Now he's put together a body from parts of some of the corpses he's dug up. And next to the body, he's put a photo of the girl who left him, in the hopes that some part of her essence will enter the empty vessel. As some modern Frankenstein, he intends to give life to the body by means of electricity. Ed sees himself pulling the lever, but before he can find out if it worked, if the body is alive, he appears to jump through time. Now Ed is in 1978, June 6th, almost the 7th, as he looks at his watch and it's 11:50 p.m. The date he sees in a page of a journal flying by, carried out by the wind. He is in a city destroyed by a nuclear war, which never happened. Not in this reality, anyway. Ed sees the boy jumping through time and space once again. What was once a bouquet of flowers rests next to a long forgotten grave. That is all we can expect in life. When we go, our loved ones will mourn us and cry for some time, recalling memories with us, but not too long. they learn to move on and leave us behind, to forget. Ed just knows the boy was never born, not in this reality. The boy just wanted peace and kept himself from being born. There is no grave, no tomb, no resting place for the boy. He is now at peace, wherever he may be. From out of nowhere, a girl appears. As white as snow her skin is, dark as ebony her long hair. There is no exit for her. She's on the edge of the precipice, a man getting closer, no options left. To live or to be free, that's the end of the road for the girl. She jumps to her own demise, feeling like she cab fly for a few seconds, and then the sea. She turns into sea foam. She appears to be floating on the ocean, feeling but peace and quiet. Another man comes into the scene. He was on the beach and comes to the girl. He looks into her blue eyes. Suddenly, it is Ed looking into those eyes, and then it's the firmament and the cold space. It starts raining, and Ed can see the drops falling to floor, and the tombs, the cemetery again. The abandoned and long-forgotten grave's tombstone reads, Carola Duval. Was it all a dream? Is Ed wondering when he starts an astral travel? Feels himself leaving his body, only it's not him, but a boy he's seen before. Somewhere in dreams, perhaps. Ed sees the boy getting back in his body as three tall beings with elephant-like skin stand next to him. Those beings have rat-gray skin, huge black eyes, no iris or retina, just pupil, no nose, no mouth, oval heads. The boy covers his head with the sheets, hoping they will leave soon. Now Ed finds himself in his own room, his head covered, those beings next to him. Through the sheets, he can see blue lights and begins floating above his bed. And now he is the one hoping they leave. Ed wakes up a little dizzy and having no idea what that all was. When did they leave? Did they do something to him? He takes a shower, gets downstairs, and grabs a glass with orange juice and goes to school. Again, he pays no attention to his class or classmates. During lunch, sitting with his friends, they are all laughing and talking, and he's just gone. He remembers when the last pandemic happened. He dreamed of a guy meeting three shadowy figures. Never gave it much thought, but now he wonders if that was a dream at all. And is it somehow related to what he's been seeing in dreams? Are you here? Asks his mom, when once again he hasn't touched his food. He's playing with his fork and some peas. He found himself staring at a girl in some Greek ruins. Ed goes to bed early. He is staring at the ceiling, not thinking of anything. He doesn't even notice when he falls asleep. Or is he? Through the corner of his right eye, he sees three green-skinned beings, 4 feet tall, tops. They were there a second before. Now, they're gone. It is 3:15 a.m. and he falls asleep once more. He is just a child, 4, 5 years old, playing in the park, his mom holding his baby brother's hand. Now his mom goes to the ice cream truck while he watches his brother. It is now late and dark, all 3 of them walking home. His dad is there, waiting for them, and those 3 eye beings in front of them, his baby brother, they take with them. And his parents never talked about him again, like he never existed. He didn't exist, not in this reality, anyway. The female being speaks, or rather, prints it on Ed's mind. They do not move their mouths. Your brother has a bigger fate, speaks the being on the left. How can you? Asks Ed inside his head. We can see your thoughts, says the being on the right. And you can see ours, adds the one on the left. You had no sibling in this life. That's a memory of another reality, said the female. And now he's here again, looking down the cliff, watching the waves crashing on the beach. Same place he was when his baby brother went missing. Or at least, that's what Ed would remember. Toodle-oo. Mayor Ottentail, Arizona, 1875. Painter, the man known throughout town only by his profession, rolls onto his back, letting out a phlegmy cough, skin and bones, with one sad gray eye and the other covered by a patch and sporting a bushy brown beard and the remnants of a rumpled suit. Painter possesses immense talent. He's created numerous portraits and landscapes, as well as the risque painting of Painted Lady Queen Winona that hangs over the Wild Weed Saloon's bar. But he drinks away what money he makes. I'm letting you out so you can enjoy Mayor Ottentail's 3-day birthday celebration, Marshal Cy Kincaid says, a towering, authoritative figure with a deep voice and rugged looks. 35-year-old New Hampshire native Cy is assisted in his duties by his 33-year-old Biloxi-born Deputy Van Sickle, whose droopy mustache, short, skinny frame, and lack of education belie his courage. It's bad enough this rat-trap town is named after him, Painter says. The only thing that blathering weasel deserves is a birthday cake with a stick of dynamite in it. You're off your mental reservation. For somebody who's only been here a year, you sure formulated a deep dislike for the mayor, Van notes. It ain't 'cause he's a southerner, is it? 'Cause if it is, you and me gonna have a tussle. Painter pulls his rumpled vest into place. No, it's who he is. He's been mayor here for 7 years, Cy says. 7 prosperous years. He helped start the bank and sank his own role into the general store and the livery stable. He hired us to protect the town. He's talked up your skills as an artist and sent you business. Just because he teases you once in a while about your liquor intake doesn't make him a bad man. You ought to kiss his feet. I've got something else he can kiss. Chad, exiting the town hall, Mayor Druce Ottentail surveys the town's crowded streets. Banners are stretched between buildings, saying, "Happy birthday to our beloved mayor," and "Happy 40th, Mayor Ottentail." Salesmen hawking remedies, clowns handing out candy, peddlers selling silks, and stalls offering games of skill line the streets. Druce grumbles when he sees his wife posing for a portrait. Opal Ottentail is noted for her pale, delicate looks. She is also witty, erudite, knowledgeable, and caring. Qualities missing in Druce, who is viewed as all business, as suggested by his reedy build, stern features, beady eyes, tidy mustache, and refined southern accent. Really? In the street? You're treating the First Lady of Ottentail like a common harlot. Painter puts his brush down on the easel. "I don't have a studio, Ottertail." Druce pulls his wife to his side. "Well, you need to get one, you disgusting Yankee vagabond. Until you do, stay away from Opal. Who ever heard of a one-eyed painter? And in the future, the name's Ottentail, and you'll address me by my title." "Yes, Mayor." Druce's pallid features burn crimson. He takes a threatening step toward Painter, but is pulled back by Sigh. Van positions himself between them. "I never seen two men who can get each other's goat more than you two. Look around you, Mayor. Look at the banners, the balloons, and the stalls selling cards and buttons with your name and face on them, celebrating your birthday. You don't want to spoil all this by picking a fight with Painter. It's about time my husband was feted, don't you think?" Opal beams as Druce pulls her away. "Yes, ma'am," Van replies, giving Sigh a queer side glance. "She just say something about the mayor smellin' bad?" Van asks. 6 men on horseback trot past. The burly lead rider locks eyes with Sigh. "That's Jack Aker. I'd say our peaceful celebration just went to seed," Van comments. Aker and his gang tie their horses up at the Wildweed Saloon. Jack Aker takes a long, scornful look at Sigh and Van before joining the rest of the gang inside. Born in Massachusetts, the Aker brothers served in the Union Army during the war. Afterward, they were guards for the Northeastern Railway, until they realized that robbing trains was easier and more profitable than guarding them. Wearing a perpetual frown across his sunburnt features, 44-year-old Jack Aker is crafty and murderous. Unlike his brothers, Jack is educated and prefers swindling to shooting. A ladies' man before the war, 37-year-old Lon Aker is sensitive about the angry red scar that runs from his forehead to his chin. 30-year-old Boston Belly Aker is an imposing 6'6" and unafraid to use his size to get what he wants. Riding with the Akers are their scruffy 17-year-old cousins, Les and Stanley Tremaine, who have fallen in love with the outlaw life. Them hard cases is here for one thing, skullduggery, Van says. 6 again 2. The odds ain't stacked in our favor. Maybe we can reduce them and nip this situation in the bud. That tall dandy in the black duster and the stovepipe hat, that's Cack Brooder. He's wanted for killing a man in Stiffgate that he claimed dealt from the bottom. Let's send him back there. Drawing his gun, Cy confronts Brooder at the faro table. Party's over. You've got a hanging to attend. Yours. The Tremaine brothers brandish Bowie knives. Van swings the shotgun in their direction. Really, children? Behave, boys, Jack says. Belly. Acre slowly rises. You gotta go through me to get him. Van points the shotgun at Belly. This'll go through you, faster'n spoiled milk. Jack pulls his brother back into his chair. Turn your steam down, Boston. You shouldn't treat visitors who've come here to spend their money and join your celebration like this, Marshall. Is that why you're here, Jack? Cy asks. It's not to rob the bank, steal some strumpet's pay, or gun somebody? No, and maybe. Jack replies, smirking. Well, there's going to be one less of you to do it, Cy replies. Come on, Cack. Brooder raises his hands. You gonna help me out, Jack? We know a Jim Dandy lawyer in Stiffgate, Jack replies. Don't worry, Cack, Lon adds. If we can't free you legally, we'll blast you out as soon as we're through here. But don't worry. Any witness to your shootin' who gets a good look at Belly's gonna forget what he saw. Cy motions Cack toward the door. You're starting out on the wrong foot, Marshall. I was about to say the same thing, Jack. Lon turns to Jack as Cack is led away. We just lost our best shooter. That doesn't change what we came here to do. Van picks at his teeth with a toothpick. That was what you call a gourmet lunch. We ought to do that more often. As often as my wallet can take, Deputy. Tilting his head, Van asks, what in tarnation is that noise? Sounds like a drum beat. But the parade's not till later, Cy answers. The pair follow the sound, which leads them to the town hall. Painter is marching back and forth in front of the building, banging on an old drum. Druce exits the building. Shaking his fist at Painter, he rushes to the lawman's side. Arrest him! Cy scratches his head. For what? Bad rhythm? Disturbing the peace. He's a menace. Since when did a drum become a dangerous weapon? Van questions. Just tell him to vamoose. I'm trying to close a deal to bring the railroad here, but he's ruining my chance. You mean our chance, right, Mayor? Cy asks. Do your job, or you'll be looking for another one. Druce huffs, retreating inside. Van whistles. Guess some folks is still fightin' the war. Later that afternoon, Painter is plying his craft outside the Wild Weed Saloon. Try not to squirm, Pearl, Painter says to his subject. Why? This ain't no photograph. Painter looks at Pearl, then back at his painting, hoping the tough cook will be happy to see herself without the pockmarks and missing teeth that mar her coarse appearance. Passing by, Druce glances at the portrait, muttering, ugly as a mud fence. You say something, Your Majesty? Pearl asks, making a fist. Just how lovely you look. I can't believe they's holding a celebration for you. You four-flusher, Pearl says. Sounds like she knows you well. Painter comments. Several townspeople gather around the portrait to gawk at it as Pearl raises her voice. my husband, Maitland, rest his soul, fought off the Apaches to help bring this town into being. He don't get no parade, no fireworks, no banners. All you done, Druce, is claim his accomplishments for your own, while keeping your hand in the town's treasury till. The spectators glare at Druce, who smiles sheepishly. Jack and Lon join the crowd, throwing their arms around Druce. "Howdy, Mayor," Jack says, smirking. "Yeah, remember us?" Lon asks, running his finger down his scar. Druce breaks away from them, bumping into Cy. "These scallywags are causing trouble," he gasps. "We're just two slightly lubricated visitors, admiring the work of an artiste," Lon comments. Druce backs further away, his unblinking stare still riveted on the acres. "You know those two yahoos?" Cy asks. "Yes, they know me, and I know what they want to do to me. You have to get them out of town before they kill me." "He's been sampling the spiked punch," Lon says. "They haven't done anything," Cy notes. "Not yet. When they do, my death will be on you, Marshal," Druce shouts, hurrying off. "Dramatic, ain't he?" Lon comments. The following morning, Druce bursts through the jail's door, shoving a piece of paper in Cy's face. "What's the meaning of this?" Cy gives the page a cursory glance, passing it on to Van. "Looks like a wanted poster with your name on it. Something you're not telling us, Mayor. Did you read it?" "Yep. It says you're a war criminal. The drawing is a nice likeness of you, too." "I'm not a war criminal." "Well, somebody thinks you are. There's a dozen of them posted up and down Main Street. My birthday celebration, my name, my reputation are in question." Cy narrows his gaze. "Just what did you do during the war, Mayor?" Druce clears his throat. I was behind the lines. He had it easy, while Yoon and me was taking pot shots at each other," Van jokes. "It was never easy. The filth, the rats, the lack of supplies. Watching Natchez burn." "You was stationed in Natchez?" Van asks. "I ran the prisoner of war camp there." Van clenches his fists, his breath exiting in fitful bursts. "You sick son of a gun. You took pleasure out of starving and torturing soldiers. The Yankees took their anger out on us because of the way you mistreated their men. You're a disgrace to the uniform of the Confederate States Army. You murdering cur. Why don't you go take down the fake wanted posters, Van?" Cy suggests. "Why? They're true." "Git." Van spits at Druce's feet, storming out. "He fought on your side, Druce. I can't imagine how the Union prisoners feel about you. What went on in that camp? We had no water supply, no food, unsanitary conditions, and 20,000 prisoners. Most of them died from scurvy and dysentery. In the summer, we lost 100 a day to the heat. When one man died, another took his rotting rags. The prisoners were always trying to escape, so we had to resort to extreme methods. Anyone who got too close to the fence was shot. The boys, the drummer boys, they weren't going to survive anyway. So, you murdered them? I don't expect you to understand, Cy. It was war. When the armistice was signed, I was tried for war crimes and acquitted. Jack and Lon Acre were two of the prisoners who attended the trial. They swore vengeance, that I'd pay someday, and they are here to collect. Standing at the side of the podium, Cy elbows Van, pointing at the Acre gang. The gang has gathered near the front of the podium, so Druce can see their taunting smiles. Druce pecks Opal on the cheek. Shuffling papers, he begins his speech. The war against the states was hell, he says, looking at Jack and Lon Acre. Each of us lucky to survive left a piece of us behind on some battlefield, some hospital, or some prison, Jack shouts. I still wake up in a cold sweat at nights, yelling the names of the Union soldiers I had to kill. You mean murder? Jack grumbles. He doesn't have nightmares. He gave them to us, Lon adds. An eerie silence permeates as the crowd waits for a stunned Druce to respond. The crowd jumps, then laughs as a succession of firecrackers explode near the stand. Druce cringes behind the podium. Realizing he's unharmed, he slowly rises, grinning nervously. Opal lies on the floor next to him, writhing in pain. Who would want to hurt my wife? Druce asks. Not Opal. You? Cy grimly declares. She was lucky, though. The bullet passed right through her arm. You think they were aiming for me, after what you told me? Yep. We found a rifle across the street in a second-floor room of the hotel. It's a standard Henry rifle used by soldiers. It could be owned by any one of us, including the Acres. I remember seeing Acre and his boys. They were standing in front of us, Druce says. Looks like you got more enemies than we thought, Mayor. That evening, Druce sways as he sits atop the bar, his storytelling embellished by the strength of the liquor he's been drinking for the past several hours. It's about time the mayor ran out of yarns and out of steam, Van says. I'm tired of babysitting this blatherskite and having to stick him like a leech. Cy scans the room. It's the last night of his celebration. He's going to suck as much flavor out of the moment as he can. I just wish he'd picked a less public place to do it in. And we had those bluebellies trapped in the valley. It was a turkey shoot. The doors swing open. Jack Acre and his gang saunter in. Jack acknowledges Painter with a nod, quickly moving on. The Tremaine brothers thread through the crowd, moving to Druce's right side, while the Acre brothers gather left of the mayor. I could hear Dixie coming from the band. How could you hear it above the screams of the prisoners you tortured? Lon asks. Oh, he could, brother, Jack says. Because they don't write songs about cowards. Toodle-oo, Mayor, a gunshot echoes throughout the barroom. A bullet buries itself in the pillar next to Druce's head. Cy pushes Druce off the bar. Druce falls behind it, curling up underneath it, out of everyone's sight. Cy notices that none of the Acres have drawn their weapons. Growling like a mad beast, Belly swats everyone in his path aside. Grabbing Cy, he puts him in a bear hug, crushing him. Let me go, Belly. Sure, when you're dead. Reaching for his gun, Cy jams it between them, firing 3 shots. Belly releases him. Backing away, he laughs at the blood spurting from his chest as he falls face first. Jack and Lon reach for their guns. Lon fires at Cy. His 2 bullets strike Le Tremaine, killing him as he runs in front of Cy in an attempt to escape. Stanley Tremaine reaches for his Bowie knife, intent on throwing it at Cy, but a sea of panicking customers knocks the blade from his hand, and he's pushed out the back door. He doesn't return. Cy fires 2 shots at Lon, who drops his gun, falling backward. Hiding behind a pillar, Jack hits Van on the forearm with a slug from his Colt. Cradling his shotgun, Van returns fire, splintering the pillar. A second blast blows a now exposed Jack off his feet. Druce greets Cy on the street the next morning. They watch a crew of men pulling down banners and sweeping up the celebration's confetti. How's Acre? Gut shot, and about ready to join his brothers in the mortuary. I'm going to Doc's office to see him now. I hate to owe a Yankee, but thank you, Marshal. It's nice not to have to look over my shoulder anymore. I'm so happy. I think I'll have that reprobate painter paint my portrait. Toodle-oo. Peh. Jack grabs Cy's hand as the pain sears through his body. You know what I regret most? That a Reb finished me. You carried the pain of being in Ottentail's prison for 10 years. Why try to kill Druce now, Jack? We were paid to create a ruckus during the mayor's speech. The man who hired us decided he was going to kill Ottentail. He shot Ottentail's wife by mistake. Then he wanted to kill Ottentail while he was drunk in the saloon. He missed again. Everybody, including you, thought me or one of my brothers had pulled the trigger, so Belly decided to act first. He should have left the killing to us. Who hired you? Jack wheezes heavily. A broken man. He was a prisoner with Lon and me in Natchez. He was a clean-cut, handsome kid, a drummer boy during the war, never even shot a gun. I almost didn't recognize him when he rode into our camp last year, all thin and grizzled. Ottentail had made an example of him, whipped him, stuck a hot poker in his eye, and left him for dead. The Rebs buried him alive outside of the camp. He dug his way out and crawled back to the Union line. The loud report of a shotgun blast sounds in the street. Opal's scream sends Cy scrambling to the window. Help! Painter just shot my husband. Paranoia. It was a cold November evening. Rain was showering on the street, creating a constant background noise. People ran from cover to cover, and residents of the building gathered near the window, admiring the incredible scenery outside. Except for Carl. Carl spent what seemed like an eternity examining his mug. His favorite mug, the mug he had for several years. Yet there was something strange with it. Using something for a long time, you remember small things about it. Little cracks, stains, tiny pieces of something edible that was stuck near the handle. It was there, but something was wrong. Just like if someone bought a brand new mug and, "Hey, Carl, are you all right?" Jesus Christ. Carl got frightened and turned around, convulsively trying to control his hands and not to break anything. The mysterious voice belonged to his friend, Conrad, who stood in his kitchen with an anxious expression and a bottle of wine. Yes, I'm all right. It's just... Wait. How did you get into my apartment? You gave me the spare keys, remember? Conrad put the bottle on a table and proceeded with the conversation. Are you sure you are all right? You look really concerned about something. I mean, people in your profession always look concerned, but today, it's a bit too much. What's going on? Yeah, no, it's nothing serious. Carl got 2 wine glasses in the kitchen and proceeded to sit at the table while trying to express his concerns. It's just my mug. It doesn't look right. Your mug? Conrad was visibly surprised. The one you have from college? The only thing that's not right about it is that I remember you holding your mug more than holding your ex-wife. I mean, that's why we got divorced. Carl laughed. Not because of the mug, obviously, but you get the point. Carl realized he had forgotten about a wine opener and went to the kitchen to get it, while continuing his speech. The point is, it's not like it should be. It's hard to explain. Something is not right. Maybe it's a little cleaner than usual, but something else is off too. That happens to mugs when they get cleaned, Conrad said, trying to play it as a joke, but looking really concerned. Are you saying what I think you are saying? The room was silent for a moment. Carl was deep into his thoughts and unsure if he wanted to discuss it. But there is no better person to share his fears than Conrad. I mean, Carl began hesitantly. You know the country we live in, with all the secret police and repressions and all this stuff. What if they are spying on me? You are right about a country we live in. Conrad ate an olive and continued. And you know much better than I do about all the people that fell into paranoia and lost themselves in madness. No one was watching them. And no one is watching you, Carl. You just forgot that you washed the mug. Don't do this to yourself. Yeah, I guess you are right. I'm seriously, Carl. Don't do this to yourself. This country already lost too many good men to paranoia. We cannot lose you too. You are right. And I really mean it. Carl and Conrad smiled at each other and started the dinner. While you age, you tend to lose your friends. Not because something is wrong with you or with them, at least mostly, but because life drives you apart. You begin to work. They begin to work. You start a family. They start a family. Suddenly, you don't see each other anymore. You hardly know what is happening in each other's lives. And all your conversations are mostly wishing each other a Merry Christmas. That was not the case for Carl and Conrad. They were there for each other for as long as they can remember. They finished school together, lived together through college, and helped each other in all ways possible. Conrad was there when Carl got married and divorced. Even when they started to drift apart, they made a deal to gather every 2 weeks to drink some wine and catch up on what was going on in their lives. Carl knew he could trust Conrad and didn't lie when he said he would abandon all that spy paranoia. At least, he thought that. Soon after Conrad left, Carl poured himself some tea in the mug, the one that almost drove him crazy, went to his cabinet, and opened some documents he was working on. He opened a file, took a sip of tea, and wanted to start the work, but he still hesitated. He could not stop staring at the mug. Obviously, Conrad was right. The mug was the same as always. But Carl could not stop thinking that someone bought a new mug and tried to recreate the original one with cracks and stains. Was it paranoia? Certainly. But Carl knew one thing. He must do something to find out, or his mind will never be at peace again. That night, Carl put away his documents, finished the tea, and went to sleep. The following day, he bought a camera and hid it in the cabinet. If someone was there spying on him, they would return to the apartment. Days passed, and Carl sat in his cabinet each evening and watched videotapes from his camera. Nothing. Day after day, week after week. He did not tell Conrad anything about it, so as to not disappoint his friend. He knew that it was not healthy to do something like that to yourself, but he couldn't stop. He promised to monitor it for a month or a month and a half, and then stop. It was almost the deadline, if not counting the ones Carl already moved to later. He understood that he slowly lost control over his paranoia and knew that it must come to an end. One more time. That's it. Carl committed to watching the very last tape from this camera, and there was nothing. Again. But something was off. Carl replayed the tape again and noticed what was bothering him. The timestamp skipped 3 seconds once. It may have been just a manufacturer error or problems with the power supply. But Carl still wanted to check for something. If he was right, someone might have erased part of the tape. In that case, they knew where the camera was because they saw how Carl hid it. He took his flashlight and tested it against his camera. Light reflected on the lenses and created small flares. If he was being watched, his apartment must contain other cameras. Carl knew that he was too deep into his paranoia, but could not resist himself. After all, if he found out he was right, that's not paranoia. He started flashing his apartment, inch by inch. He couldn't find anything until he saw a flare in a bookshelf. He put his hands on the shelf and tried to find what caused this flare. His hands touched something, and his heart skipped a beat. There was another camera, He rushed to his desk to watch the tape on a newly found camera. His hands shook, and his mind could not focus on a single thought. He finally had proof that he was right all the time. Nevertheless, it took him much courage to activate the camera. He would have to live with whatever was there for the rest of his life. But he knew that there was no other choice. The tape was on. Carl first noticed a person changing the SD card on a camera. It seemed like a regular procedure, and Carl could not wait to see who this man was. A second later, the villain revealed his face. It was Conrad. Carl could not believe what he saw. Conrad, his best friend, was a secret police officer, and he was spying on Carl. The tape went on as Conrad took Carl's camera and started editing it. This is why there was nothing on the camera before, but it took just one mistake for everything to be revealed. Then Conrad found the documents Carl was working on, took some notes in his textbook, put everything in its place, and left. Carl was shaking. He could not breathe normally and started crying. Conrad. Out of everyone, Conrad, his best friend, the only person he could trust. All these years, everything they went through, all the time they helped each other live through the worst moments of their lives, were now void. Nothing. Just a lie. Carl was heartbroken. He didn't know what to do, and wasn't even sure if he wanted to live anymore. He felt like all his life had been a giant lie. No, it's not how it should end. One thing that jerk was right about is that this country could not lose Carl, too. It was hard and tough, but he had to do something right now. First, Carl scouted the house to find more cameras. There was one in the bedroom and one in the living room. Now, it's time for action. Two can play this game, and Conrad just lost a huge advantage. Now Carl knows he is being watched. First, Carl edited the footage from the found cameras. Now he knew exactly where they were and how to hide what should not be found. He didn't want to look too suspicious, though. Sometimes he left some clues, usually useless, so that he would not be detected. As for Conrad, Carl made sure he did not suspect anything. As hard as it was, the two continued their tradition of gathering every 2 weeks. Carl had to put all his willpower to use to not punch his friend in the face. Sometimes he skipped the wine party for made-up reasons, but always edited the videotapes accordingly. One evening, when they sat at the table, Carl said the one thing he had planned for a long time. "Hey, Conrad, I want to show you something I was working on. Just promise to keep the secret, all right? It might cause big problems if anybody knows, except for us, the cemetery's keeper. There once was a man and he used to be known as the cemetery's keeper. He would wash the stones and make the graves intact with new paint jobs and flowers. He would be seen sitting down talking to the stones. While he ate his lunch, it was a different stone each day. Everybody thought he was creepy. He wore black every day, like he was about to attend a funeral. A full suit and tie. Even in the summer, he would watch everyone from afar that went past, especially those who came in. He would hide near the trees and light up a cigarette. You could hear him choke from a mile away. That's how everyone knew he was there. The coughing. He helped the community by doing his job and keeping it clean, but he would never get recognized for it. It was a hard job. Nobody knew his family. They knew he was watching them. He hung around the graveyard at night to stop the youngsters from vandalizing the stones, but he had to be careful as they were loud and in groups and could possibly be holding a weapon. He would just scrub it off when they left. Until one day, some youngish kids came by and smashed up all the gravestones and tried to dig to find the coffins and the bodies inside. The next day, he was found dead, lying among the gravestones, with his head in a bucket of water, what he was cleaning with. Whoever it was drowned him, and they had a purpose. There was a rumor going around saying that he hurt some children, but that was a lie. I'm Detective Susan Baker, and I took over this case. Two things were obvious, one being the fact that this was foul play. The other, I think I know who did it, and I needed him to confess. This fella I speak of has just gotten out of prison for murdering someone 5 years ago. He only got 5 bloody years. Pathetic from the justice system's side. But nobody showed up at court for him. His record was clean. He had never done a bad thing in his entire life. He had strangle marks around his neck. When I found him, he was cold. He had been beaten before he drowned. The coroner said he was definitely strangled to death. He had knife marks on his rib cages and a big one marked on his throat. Whoever killed him really wanted him to die. They collected the DNA and matched it with the strangle marks. Whoever it may have been left dirty scratch marks. With the gunk left under their nails, we found a match, just who I thought it was. The man has just gotten out of jail, and he got bail to his mother's house. He had nowhere else to go. He had a big group of friends that committed crime all over the area. The crime rate was bad without them. Hopefully, my partner, Sir John, and I could take down who did it today. It was going to be a long one, which meant that we wouldn't be with our families today, which was Christmas Eve. I wasn't expecting that. The boss said we could go, but once again, we had to protect the city. I put up so many Christians' lights this year, hoping to not have them vandalized too. During the festive holidays, the people in my area too would go absolutely nuts screaming, fighting, punching on doing drugs, hard drugs, might I add, drug dealers on each corner. The lowest act was burning someone's house down on Christmas Eve, leaving them with nothing. In this area, this has unfortunately happened on a regular basis, due to mainly domestic violence or vandalism, the occasional break-in. I've gotten a few bravery awards due to taking down a man with a gun and saving someone from committing suicide. My partner is my mentor. He is a good bloke, tough, well-built. It was time to search for more clues. Maybe we will find footprints or something leading to the murder area. As we arrived in the darkness, we heard more youngsters roaming about and obviously destroying the headstones. We turned our flashlights on and pulled out our badges. They were horrified, stopped in their tracks. "We need the names of all of you. Now," my partner said with a scary tone. About an hour later, we had all their names. They were finally going to be charged with vandalism. Each kid had to pay for the damage that they did, with their protective parents. Each of them got a fine of $1,000. Each made payment plans. I wondered who would take over the graveyard now, or would they just let it overgrow? The graveyard overgrown. It had been about a month since he passed away. The stones were dirty. Vines growing in every direction. We interrogated the fella that I thought it was, but he would not confess, even though we found his DNA on the man's neck. He said the old man kissed me, and I put my hands on his throat, but he didn't die. Last time I saw him, he was alive. I didn't kill him. I knew that was a lie, because the old man didn't go near anybody, because they could be armed with a weapon. We found a couple of footprints. We matched it with the same shoes, but he still would not confess, even after a violent interrogation. We showed him pictures of the old man's crime scene. He looked away. We made sure that we got a warrant out for his arrest. We found the murder weapon after a big search in the creek. He had dumped it in there. He had no remorse. He had his poker face on. He was put in a cell for attempted murder up until his court hearing.